Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Once Upon a Time, as well as the latest episode of American Gods. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows I'm talking about. So for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about the season finale of Once Upon a Time, you can skip to what I say about the latest episode of American Gods. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the season finale of Once Upon a Time. Fantastic episodes. I have to put an emphasis on that. How I'm going to go about this, I'm probably just going to end up bouncing back between part one and part two. But what I'm going to do is try to focus on one and then move on to first of all, finding out what the curse is all about. It's literally the original curse that Regina put on. I mean, it makes sense, obviously, but the Black Fairy kind of put her own little twist to it. Basically, it's kind of like everything that happened. Because I was wondering, especially because they kind of rehashed like the first, like they kind of give you key points of the first season in the intro, like, oh, previously on Once Upon a Time. I'm like, okay, so how's that going to... So basically, Henry wakes up and the town's under the curse again. And we see that basically this is like almost an alternate reality where it's not necessarily an alternate reality, but everyone remembers it almost like it's an alternate reality where it's like when, like, this is after Henry did try to convince Emma about, like, oh yeah, your mom is Snow White, your dad is Prince Charming, magic is real, fairy tales are real, but it's like, basically, this is after he ate a poison apple, well, you know, the poison apple pie that he did back in season 1, but it didn't successfully work. Like, it wasn't a whole, like, oh, like, she believed and True Love's kiss woke him up. It's like, nope, that didn't happen. And so, like, Emma thinks she's just crazy. She kind of got locked up. So, she's even telling Henry, it's like, no, I started believing you for a moment. It's like, no, I'm just crazy. You're growing up. You need to stop believing that stuff. We find out that Fiona is his mom, because in this world, it's her who's the mayor and not Regina. So, it's such a delicious twist. I love it. It was just so, like... And just her approach to everything, because obviously, like, because in this world also, like, obviously Rumple's a part of it, and so is Gideon, but she's removed Belle from the equation and everything, which is like, you know, because, you know, you have Rumple being like, oh, yeah, I wonder what happened to Belle and everything, even at one point asking Fiona to look into it and everything, and she's like, oh, yeah, like, your wife, like, she ran off, she left you and your son behind and everything, and it's like, wow, that's a lot to handle. It's like, wow. It's like, obviously we know it's like, obviously you did something to her. It's like, but, like, it's just interesting seeing her world. We don't get, like, obviously the main focus is everyone because, like, you know, Emma still doesn't believe Henry. So it's like, for Henry, it's gotta be frustrating too because it's like, it's literally, it's like, I already went through this once before, but now it's even worse. Because even though Regina kind of pushed at points to kind of make Henry seem a little crazy, like, not to the extent that Fiona did. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it. The fact of the matter is, she pushed him down the stairs. It's like, wow. And on top of that, she used magic to make him look even crazier. It's like, oh, how could I have pushed him that far away? I wasn't near him. It's like, she used magic. It's like, oh, Henry. It's like, dude, oh, she is so deliciously evil. I'm like, wow. Because not even Regina ever went to that extent. I mean, mainly because even though Regina was kind of in a position where she needed, like, she took in Henry and everything because she wanted something to love, just to kind of, you know, she needed someone to love. And it's like, you know, at the beginning, it was means for filling that hole in her heart, but it's, you know, she grew to just plain out love Henry, and that's why he is her son. Just as much as he's Emma's son, he's also her son. So, but she would never hurt him. Yeah, she might have gone to make him out sound crazy and everything, but she never would outright hurt him like that. And it's like, to me, I had to bring it up again, because it's like, I feel like it's a point that even Fiona kept missing. It's like, you do realize that that's your great-grandson you're doing that to. And maybe that's what this whole thing was about. Like, maybe she wanted to keep Henry close, because it's like, out of anyone, it's like, you could possibly be the most trouble, I guess. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, granted, we don't know in this reality, like what kind of false reality she created. Like, oh, I was a good mother and everything. It's like, I'm pretty sure probably everything she did, she probably just rewrote everything to make it seem like everything Regina did as a mom, she did. But it's like, because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, her plan was like, oh, to get my family together and everything. I mean, that's why she removed Belle from the equation, because, like, oh, like, she even brings it up to Rumple later on. It's like, Belle would have just gotten in the way. She would have kept you from tapping into the real darkness that's inside of you. She would have made, you know, because obviously Belle always wanted to see the good in Rumple, and he would have kind of let her do that and kind of bring out the good in him. And it's like, so it's all about your family and everything. But once again, Henry's part of your family too, but it's like, I guess your great grandson doesn't matter. Like, I don't, like I said, I don't get it. And also, that's another thing I'm very interested in. I really quickly bring it up. Obviously, I'll get to it later on because I'm just going to talk about that at the tail end. But like, obviously, the flip side of the story, we kept seeing some little girl that has a book. Now, I kept thinking, I was like, oh, could this little girl be the one who originally gave Henry the book in the first place? Because I don't actually remember how Henry ever got like the storybook in the first place. I don't remember if that was ever really brought up. Maybe it was, but it's been a while. But the fact of the matter is, I was like, maybe that's connected to that. Obviously, we find out much later on what that's about. But like I said, I'll bring it up at the tail end. But it's like, my other thought about that is like, I think it's just because Henry, I don't know whether it's him being an author that like, he's unaffected, or is it just because his belief in everything is so strong? Because from the very beginning, he was the only one that, obviously aside from Gold as well as, Regina, who know about the whole world of like magic and stuff like that. So obviously, like, when he originally got Emma, basically, back when the whole Isaac tried to rewrite history and stuff like that, make heroes and villains switch places and stuff like that. And then, like, even in that reality, Henry was the only one who remembered. I think Emma did too, if I remember correctly. But it's like, it always seems like Henry's the one that kind of escapes everything. And I'm wondering, is it, in those particular cases from the beginning, was it because he had the potential of being an author? Is that what kind of protected him? Or is it his strong belief that prevents him from being affected? Because like, out of everyone in the town, he wasn't affected. I mean, granted, we ended up finding out later on that Rumpel wasn't, which is like, I loved it. I was like, because I kept wondering, I was like, nah, Rumpel, you're playing this, aren't you? It's like, no, maybe you really aren't. But I should have known the moment he started bringing up that book to Gideon, and he was like, oh yeah, your mother wrote this book. It's like, don't you want to know what happened to her? It's like, mom left us. You're the only one that hasn't realized that we're fine by ourselves. I mean, in a beautiful way, it's like, oh, obviously him and Gideon run the shop. It's Gold and Son. So like, obviously there's a beautiful side to it. I mean, but granted, not the full family that they deserve and want, so it's just crazy to me that things like, I mean, to be fair, it's like I should have known from the very beginning, because once again, much like Henry, Rumpel isn't all for like letting things kind of go. Like, I think the author situation with Isaac, I think that's the only time he's ever really been influenced by something. Because even let's not forget the last episode of the musical, he's like, did you really think the Dark One is singing? So he's not affected by that. And also like, but I think that was the one few times he's actually been affected by something, because that's because he wanted it to happen. He wanted to totally dive into it and be a hero. But in this case, it's like he knew he couldn't trust his mom. Just like with the whole situation with Regina, he knew he had to kind of tap into that a little bit, because I was like, yeah, like I got to make sure that I keep my wits about me, keep my magic about me as well. So he knew from the very beginning he couldn't trust his mom, especially when she starts saying stuff like, oh yeah, Belle, like all this stuff happened. Oh, Belle left you. She wanted to see the world and everything. And it's just like, yeah, he saw through her. Once again, Rumpel not being technically the best grandfather, kind of pushing Henry aside. It's like, for him, it's like, I gotta find Belle. It's like, you can save your family, but I gotta find Belle. I mean, just overall, I'm keep bouncing all over the place. I do apologize. Obviously, you have like on the other side of things, you have Hook, Snow, Prince Charming, and Regina, as well as Zelena, are in the Enchanted Forest again, trying to find their way back to Emma. But it's like, with Emma's disbelief, all the other realms start disappearing, like Agrabah, Wonderland, Oz, all places start vanishing, because like her belief, like as a savior, her belief in everything is what kind of broke the spell, broke the curse in the first place. And without that belief to kind of tie everything to this world, like everything starts to kind of slowly fade away. Which I also appreciate that Regina ends up running into the evil queen, and she's like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, because basically you didn't tell me the fact is that you killed Snow White and Prince Charming in that fake world. And now it's like, well, that other reality, I really shouldn't say fake world, but that other reality. And it's like, we were basically being hunted for, also, by my own son at that too. So that makes matters worse. So she had to find a new world. She came to here. So I'm guessing like, I mean, the way it seems like she's taking up permanent residence within the castle, which kind of brings up the point, like, do they never plan to ever go back to the Enchanted Forest? I'm curious about that. That's just kind of what popped up in my mind, but, maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. Just, it seems like she's taking up permanent residence there. She's going to be the Regina of, that lives in that world, especially since Regina's living in Storybrooke with the rest of her family. So nevertheless, but I did love the whole compliment of like, the queen being like, oh, Regina, you look so good in that outfit. And Regina's like, oh, really? You think? Thanks. And you have Zelena just rolling her eyes like, oh my God, like, come on, sis. being so like it's so almost conceited to a certain extent, and it's just I love the interaction between them. And even I also appreciate it's just like a little like body language and just how she was acting. I was like, oh yeah, because me and Robin, it's like, yeah, we steal from the rich and give to the poor some of the times, and she's kind of twirling her finger in her hair. I was like, you're acting like such a high schooler who just like you're acting like such a high schooler who just fell in love for the first time. It's like it's so super cute and adorable, just her mannerisms and everything. I really appreciated that. And also the fact is that she was willing to sacrifice herself, because it's like, Henry's just as much as her son as he is Regina's, and she was willing to kind of push back the darkness long enough to give them time, because all of it's about trying to get back to Storybrooke. And obviously you had David and Hook climbing up a beanstalk, which he references like one of the first time he met Emma. It's like, it's been such a long time since I saw the earlier seasons. I don't remember that circumstance. He's like, David kind of brings up, it's like, yeah, that's around the time, you tried to kill her and Emma, and he tried to kill Snow and Emma. He's like, yeah, but that was different. This is now. But the fact of the matter is, like, David and him kind of, it's like, yeah, I know, you're a different person now. And it's like, hey, let's climb up this beanstalk, and they go to get the bean. It's like, but when they get there, he's like, you trust me? You would trust the pride? He's like, no, I'll trust my son. And it's like, in-law. It's like, there's even a moment later on when the beanstalk fell, and then like it's like Snow runs over. She's like, David, and she moves it, and it's Hook, and is like, I think he actually even said mommy, and she's like, okay, yeah, that's going to take a while to get used to. And Jasmine's like, mommy is like, yeah, there's a whole wedding situation. He's my son-in-law now. It's just like, it's so good. It's so good. Because basically this is all about, like, because like I brought up before, Emma's belief is what channels everything. And the moment she's able to get Emma to stop believing, all the realms disappear and it kind of succumb to darkness. That's kind of the Black Fairy's plan. I mean, it ended up being the fact is that Emma ended up burning the book. Wasn't expecting that, because when she looked at Hook's face on the page, I was halfway expecting her to reach into the fire and pull it out. But it's like, nope, it didn't. The book completely burned up. Because she was able to force Emma to not believe to an extent that Regina could, because she played a very heavily psychological game. Like, I mean, I guess that's kind of Black Fairy's territory, and just like that psychological warfare. Because that's so interesting to me. Like, 'cause we got a final different perspective on what the final battle technically was. It's like, no, the battle is for her soul, for her belief as a savior. That's what this is all about. It's kind of mind games. I mean, all this is fake. Don't believe it. You're crazy type of thing. And it worked, because it's like, to her, she's like, obviously she's struggling with it. She's kind of got these memories pop in her head, but she doesn't quite want to believe it, especially when you have so many people telling, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. Your son's a little crazy. He's too old to be thinking stuff like that. So, I mean, she actually did end up leaving. I thought what was going to happen is like everyone's going to come back in time, and then she's going to be like, whoa, you're all real? Wait, what? Wait, Henry was right this entire time? I thought that was going to be the case. No, she legitimately made it back to Boston when she was going to pick up her old job again, which she hasn't had her old job in a very, very long time. I think the last time she had her old job was season 3, the second half of season 3. Like when her and Henry were under the impression that they had lived normal lives because they left Storybrooke while everyone in Storybrooke went back to the Enchanted Forest and everything. Because I thought this was going to be kind of almost a reflection of that particular scene where it's like Hook's going to make it back there and be the one to kind of make Emma realize like, oh, this is what's happening. Because he did it before, and I thought like maybe that's what they're going to aim for. It turned out to be the case, but nevertheless. But Henry had given her a book. It was kind of like a Cliff Note version that he basically written in and drew, kind of showing her like some of the stuff that went down. And it was enough to kind of bring her back, like, because she's like, yeah, I'm not this person in this book. I don't believe I am, but I would like to be. I'd like to be this mother that you think I could be. So, but then like coinciding with it is Rumpel talking to his mom, and his mom is like, oh, the fact of the matter is you can have everything, Rumpel. That's all it's going to take. Like, you could have everything. Once I take, snuff out the Savior's belief, once that's done, basically all that power will be mine, power that exists even beyond magic. I will be able to do whatever I want, and that includes being able to bring back the dead. And he ends up kind of referencing Balefire. At that moment, I was like, oh, you're talking about his dad, but it's like, no, Balefire would make more sense. So, like I said, it never happened, but I was expecting like, oh, Peter Pan and the Black Fairy, but they're not the case. But once again, still fine. But I love Rumpel not being fooled by her, because to him it's like he's learned it's like the price of magic is too steep, and he's like, I'm not going to be willing to pay the price, especially because he has so much riding on it. The rest of his family, including Belle and Gideon. He says family, and I start to think like for the longest time it's always just been Belle. Belle's the only family he really cares about. He cares about Henry too, because that is his last ties to Bellfire. But the rest of his family too. I think that's what he like. Anytime he says family, it isn't just Bellfire and Gideon. I think he includes everyone else, from Regina to Prince Charming to Emma to Snow. All of them, they're all family, you know. They've all got baggage when it comes to being a family, but nevertheless, they are still a family nonetheless. And he ends up stopping his mom. But his mom had she had kept Gideon's real heart this entire time. And so she was basically she set in motion so that Gideon and Emma would fight. That was the ultimate battle of the ultimate battle is because it's like light versus light. That's the only way you could snuff it out. Because if Emma ends up killing him, that would kind of darken her heart and get rid of her as the savior. Kind of already been down that route before, so not willing to go down that route again. Or if Gideon kills her, it kind of still does the same thing anyway, so you're kind of screwed on both fronts. And she's like, if you kill me, who's to say you won't just escalate things faster? Which he's like, well, that's a risk I'm gonna have to take. And he kills his mom. Cool. I have to put quotes around that. Maybe she's gone, maybe she's not. I don't know. But it's a situation where it's sad because it's like I said, this show does a fantastic job of being like, you feel bad for the villains and stuff like that because you know why they ended up the way they did. She did this because she wanted to protect her son from a terrible fate, but just by going out of her way trying to stop that terrible fate, she inadvertently ended up creating the terrible fate that he would have to face. And her unwillingness to give up her power is kind of set him on a path that he did, because who's to say who he would have been if she hadn't cut his destiny, who he could have been as a savior, you know? So the life choices he could have made. I mean, granted, if it wasn't for him being the Dark One and everything, who's to say he wouldn't have actually eventually met Belle, even had Gideon? So, you know, destiny and how, you know, the different paths life could have taken and everything. So a thing I thought about too is like, all right, you know, this not technically, Rumpel has killed both his parents now, because I was like, right, because I was like, yeah, he killed Peter Pan, like, you know, during at the end of the first half of season 1. Obviously, it was kind of a sacrificial situation to sacrifice himself to stop Pan, but it was like he killed his dad and now he's killed his mom, quote unquote. Like I said, whether she's completely gone or not, I don't know. I feel, you know, it's a situation like, obviously we have to remember the whole Regina and Evil Queen situation. That evil didn't just disappear like that. So whether she did or not, it was with her own wand, and who knows if that will make 100% a difference or not. I just get the feeling like it won't be that easy. But luckily, Emma did get her memories back and everything. Obviously, everyone that was trapped ended up returning to Storybrooke when it was all said and done. And Emma ended up going up against Gideon while you had Rumpel trying to get his heart back. But the fact of the matter is, it's like Rumpel, like, you know, the kind of devil on his shoulder was the Dark One talking to him. It's like, oh yeah, you can finally get everything you want. But it's like Rumpel didn't listen. It's like, no, this time I'm going to do the right thing for everyone, for my entire family. But it didn't work out. But this did lead to Emma doing making her choice. That basically during the fight, she throws down her sword, and it's like, you know, Gideon ends up stabbing her, and it releases a large light. Luckily, it's not that Emma died, but basically she changed. Like, what ended up happening is that she ended up saving both him and herself. Obviously, she didn't die, but at the same time, neither did Gideon. Gideon, in fact, has actually been returned to a kid. So basically now they don't have to worry about like those years they didn't have with Gideon. I mean, sadly, that can't be said for Emma and her family, because they would never get those years back. But now, you know, I mean, their circumstances were a bit different. At the very least, yeah, Emma went through some hardships and everything, but you could argue it's like on her path to being the savior and everything, she had to go through those hardships and everything. But also because Gideon was raised by the Black Fairies. Like, no matter how sad and messed up like Emma's situation was, it wasn't nearly as bad as like, you know, as Gideon's situation with the Black Fairy and being who she was. Which also means, what does that mean for the rest of like the people she had enslaved and stuff like that in that dimension? I guess they're free now because of that. I mean, they never got clarification on it, but I'm sure that'll kind of come up later on. But it's like, got a truly happy ending, or not necessarily a happy ending, but rather a happy beginning. And it's like, the book is done now. And I like the line of like, it took, you know, both a hero a hero, basically a hero of light, and an evil one doing the right thing, that being Emma and Rumple doing the right thing. So perfect storm that ended up creating a happy ending for everyone. We see everyone just kind of like laughing and enjoying, even at one point sitting at the table together. And then it hits. At the very end, you see a little girl, she's looking at a book and it's reading like Henry's book, and it shows you that dinner scene at the very end of her book. And she goes, knocks on the door, it's like, oh, your name's Henry Mills, right? He's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I'm your daughter Lucy. And it's like, wait, what? I had a feeling, like at the beginning where Tiger Lily's like, oh, the fact that matters, because I brought it up earlier, my thoughts about like, oh, I thought she was the one who actually gave Henry the book in the first place. I'm like, but maybe she's not. And it's like, it's not. She's his daughter, which interestingly enough makes Emma a grandmother now, which makes Prince Charming and Snow great grandparents now. So it's just like, it's crazy to think about. But I love it. Because I had my feeling, because there was inklings I had, like, especially when she ran into Tiger Lily and everything. But I was like, oh, that could easily be the past. But it's like, could this be them setting up, like, a time skip? And it seems like that might be the case. And it's like, Henry, you have to help me. Your family's in trouble. It's like, wait, what trouble? Once again, why I said, like, maybe the Black Fairy's not going. Now, whether we're going to 100% do a time skip, I don't know. Whether it's going to be, like, maybe like spoilers for Lost, because this is kind of tied. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I could be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure like a lot of people that are connected to the show are actually connected to Lost. I think I even brought that up in a video at one time, but hence the whole like back and forth like structure it has that's similar to Lost, like flashback wise. Lost kind of did I don't kind of want to go. Lost did an interesting thing with its kind of like final season and how it did something. So I'm like, is this going to do something similar? Like another comparison is kind of like the Vampire Diaries season 7. Season 7 would flip back and forth between like the 3-year time skip and before the 3-year time skip. So I wonder if they're going to do something like that. I'm very interested to see, like, because I was scared. I was like, it's like, no, this can't be like, it's like this is the final battle and everything. But it's like, it can't be like the end. I mean, it's technically the end of one book, but with every book there are sequels, and I guess this is just sequel. It's like, dude, I'm so interested to see what they decide to do with this, because it's like, it also depends on the circumstances, because obviously we see Henry's growing older, but obviously being from the Enchanted Forest and stuff like that, everyone there, like obviously Hook, Regina, Snow, Prince Charming, everyone like them originally from the Enchanted Forest they age in a very different way, because they're actually way older than what they actually are. So it begs a question, like, have they really even aged? I mean, I know Emma has, but the question is also, where is she? Are they in the Enchanted Forest now? What happened to Henry? Was Henry put on a curse to make him forget? Because, like, how do you not know you have a daughter? Because there was a knight or someone protecting her earlier, and that's why she's like, oh, where's my dad? So that was kind of probably something that was like, obviously that was happening in the middle of it. So that kind of happened in some woods. So that made me, and since we saw Tiger Lily, it makes me wonder, is that in the Enchanted Forest or not? So do they eventually go back to the Enchanted Forest for whatever reason? I don't know. Like, whatever the case may be, I'm super excited to see what goes down in the next season, which it is, in fact, they're like, oh yeah, once upon a time we'll return next season. I'm like, yes! Because I'm so curious to see what they do this season. Like, if they set up a very fascinating thing, like with the whole time skip situation. I love to see what they're going to do with it. And I wonder, is this them putting Henry more in the main protagonist seat? Like, does he still have his author powers and stuff like that? You know, it's like, it's going to be interesting, because it's going to be like, it's like once upon a time, but kind of passed on to the next generation that kind of has to repeat this cycle. So very interested to see what this all goes about. Also, who's her mom? Is it Velvet? Because we kind of saw her and him in her name is Velvet, right? That when he isn't her dad a blacksmith? We haven't seen her in a while. I think last season was the last time we saw her pop up. I think that was her at the end of the episode Henry was walking up to when he was getting towards the school bus and everything. So very, very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. I mean, well, next season, I'm sorry. So, like I said, a very, very good season finale. Also, final note, kind of really quickly, I guess nothing really came about it, but at the top of the beanstalk, why was there a dragon instead of a giant? I felt like that was kind of dim alluded. I was like, is that going to be something? I was like, oh, or is that going to find out that that's actually Lilith or something like that? You know, Maleficent's daughter, but it's like, it turned out not to be the case. It was just a dragon that scared him off I mean, I guess it was just a dragon to just be a dragon, but I was like, maybe there's some significance there. Maybe not, but maybe it was just absolutely nothing. So just kind of want to tag that in at the very end there too. So just my thoughts on that. I just thought that was kind of interesting, but nevertheless. And now moving on to this week's episode of American Gods. A very good episode, which picks up roughly around the same time as last week's episode. After Shadow lost his checkers game against Chechnabog, now he's doing a rematch. This time kind of doubling up. It's like, oh, why would I double up? Well, the fact of the matter is, you're kind of old. I mean, how long has it been since you actually, like, used that hammer of yours and kind of did one swing and killed a cow or whatever? You kind of been using that, forgot what he calls it, the gun-like thing, to kill them. And it's like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, you're growing weak. You might do it in one, you might be able to do it in two shots, but one, I mean, the fact of the matter is, you're supposed to be tough and everything, kind of playing on his pride, because he's so, like, prideful in the fact of what he can do. And it's like, oh, you wouldn't even be able to kill me in one shot. So it's like, how about we do this? I win, you come with me and Mr. Wednesday, you still get your hit when it's all said and done. But if I lose, you get to hit me a second time, just in case you can't get it through the first time. It's like, it's okay. That'll just be between you and me. So kind of attacking him on his pride and everything. Which Shadow ends up winning the game. Which I don't know. I probably misinterpreted what he was saying, because the way it sounded like Judgment Ball was like, when it's all okay, I'll go with you, but I will kill Mr. Wednesday. I don't even think it was necessarily about Shadow. I think he was saying specifically Mr. Wednesday. Maybe he was referring to Shadow, but nevertheless, Shadow agreed with him. I mean, this was all after Shadow had that weird dream where he met the youngest of the three sisters, and she brought out some interesting things that basically, like, oh, there's this, what is known as the Big Dipper. I mean, that's what Shadow referred to it as, but she's like, it's Odin's wing. That there's I think she referred to it as a bear is up there in the sky. It's kind of sealed away. That whatever it is something like a god, but not quite a god. And whatever it is bad news. That basically, if it ever gets free, it would devour everything, any and everything in its path. So it's like, yeah, that's why we sisters exist. We're up there. We're here to constantly look up the sky, to keep an eye on it 24/7. So she ended up also reading Shadow's fortune is kind of like, oh, you have nothing. But you have nothing because you believe in nothing, but you will eventually go from nothing to everything. Which I'm guessing might have to coincide with what's going on with Mr. Wednesday. Like, apparently he's definitely got some plans in motion, because the eldest of the sisters is like, yeah, your plans are going to fail. They will win. And he's like, oh. And it's like, she also brings up the fact is, like, usually I'm the one that, because she brought up the whole thing last episode about, like, she's the one that kind of tells pretty lies, because not everyone wants to know the true truth. But for him, he's like, I need the knowledge. Knowledge is better to me than, like, telling me sweet nothings to kind of ease my mind. It's like, so tell me the truth. And she's like, they will kill you this time. So that means this isn't the first time. This isn't whatever power struggle, whatever it is going on, which I think power struggle is the best word. At least for now, that's what it seems like. But this whole power struggle thing, this isn't the first time it's happened. It's happened before, but this time won't be like the others. So it seems like this is, at least to how I'm feeling, it kind of seems like this might be kind of an all or nothing bet for Mr. Wednesday. Like, whatever it is that he's planning, I have no idea. Because he's still keeping Shadow in the dark about everything. But it does seem like, and I think he's doing it for a particular reason, because it's like, obviously he brought it up before, like, one of the eldest sister asked him last episode, it's like, he doesn't know. It's like, I'm easing him into it. So what I'm thinking is that, obviously, it's easy to be like, okay, this is what everything's about. This is who I really am and everything. But it's like, Shadow wouldn't believe that. That's the thing. It's like, he needs Shadow to believe. The fact of the matter is, like, you to believe. It's like, I could say everything, but it won't mean nothing unless you believe. So I think it's like, rather than trying to say it all at once, all you would do is push him away and make him not want to believe, is you slowly kind of ease him in, like it's said, ease him into it and kind of make him believe in that way. And in this episode, he ends up making Shadow think about snow, which I love that conversation. Like, oh yeah, I got you coffee. I got you some marshmallows in your cocoa. I hope you like marshmallows. Like, really? Marshmallows? Like, why are we having this whole? Why do I look like I even care about marshmallows? Yes, I like marshmallows. I was like, dude. And just gotta keep giving up to Mr. Wednesday. Ian McShane does like a fantastic job, because I love Mr. Wednesday because he's such a smart ass. Because they're having that whole conversation, like kind of giving him this fake information. It's like, oh, what's the A on this car stand for? Could stand for anything. Alberto, Augusta, whatever you kind of feeling like. He's like, I'm feeling like asshole. He's like, well, nice to meet you, asshole. It's like, I love you. his whole plan was to rob a bank. I guess it's because like to get to Wisconsin and everything, and also to pay Shadow, he needs money. So he's setting up this whole situation, and basically like I'm not 100% understanding how he basically does it, but basically he shuts off two sides of like the ATM as well as a drop box for people to. Basically, he has a snowstorm hit, so it closes the bank, and then there's a drop box that people drop their stuff off. But he's like, no, don't worry about it. Leave it with me. There's a whole situation here. He has. Shadow being his accomplice. But Shadow's like, don't let me be a part of this. I literally have been out of jail for 5 days and you're already possibly going to put me back in jail, which unfortunately for them, it works out in the end. So, really quick, I'll bring it up. Like this is because before I kept like, oh, this has to do with Norse gods. It's like, no, from what I can tell from the different things is it seems like this pulls from mythologies all across the board. Because in this episode, we got introduced to Anubis, in which we know Anubis is Egyptian. Like I said, Mr. Wednesday has to be Odin, which he's Norse. I ended up finding out last time, like this was after the recording, that Cheknabog is apparently a Slavic god. So obviously it's pulling from different mythologies. It's not like a concrete, like, oh, everything is this and that. So, cause before I brought up, it's like, maybe the fact is everything is the same, but it's just everyone goes by different names depending on what, mythology you go by. But it's like, no, they're just actual gods from different ones. There's even an interesting conversation with Mr. Wednesday. Like, it's like this lady has a sign. He's like, yeah, she says a sign saying Jesus suffered for her. It's like, what her sins are her own suffering. Why should Jesus suffer for her? I mean, it's like, well, he died. He was because of his own dad. It's like, I don't blame the parent. Blame your own sins and stuff like that. It's basically being like, yeah, white Jesus. He's been doing pretty good for himself. It's like, which Shadow didn't ask him like, okay, wait, so how many different colors did Jesus come in? It's like, oh, apparently there's like multiple Jesuses, which is like, he's like, there's a lot of people that need Jesus. So obviously it's like, of course he's going to have like, there's going to be multiple people. So it's not a situation of like there's one, but he's taking on a form of different. It's like, no, there are literally multiple Jesus is just like there are multiple gods or whatever. It's just so interesting. Like I said, like it's hard to say where exactly it's pulling from. But he also brought up something kind of interesting. The fact is that Shadow is kind of pretending like he doesn't believe in impossible things. It's like Shadow's still believing, like, no, this isn't how it works and everything. He's like, I can't just make it snow or whatever. And then like Mr. Winston's like, you believe some dude on a TV telling you like, oh, this is what the weather is like. But then when the thought of you possibly being able to control the weather yourself, it just kind of blows your mind and everything. Also in this episode, we had a reappearance of Mads. It seems like I was wondering if that was the case because Mads is passed out in the toilet. The lady has a gun. And he's like, don't pull that trigger because most likely it's either going to jam or, it's going to backfire. You're going to lose 2 fingers. So don't touch your luck. Pow! It hits. And he's like, okay, whatever. Moves on. This guy picks him up. Sadly, that drive doesn't last long. He doesn't get arrested because immediately steel rod or whatever falls off the back of a truck and impales the dude in his mouth. And then like Mads looks to his body, like his pockets and stuff, and realizes his main gold coin is gone. That is, I guess it's tailored to all his luck and everything. It's like, why specifically one coin? Like, are the other ones just for show? Are they just kind of like money actual? And like, what's so special about this specific coin? What is it and what does it do? Like, because Shadow's like, you gave it to me. I guess it's like Mads got so drunk he didn't realize what had happened. Or Mr. Wednesday lied like crazy and was like, oh yeah, I actually stole it from him. So, like, not really understanding what that's all about. Truth be told, that's kind of what everything is about this. I'm like, I don't understand what this is, especially when it kind of cuts between the story and then also telling you about the other gods. Like, obviously, that whole opening about Anubis and stuff like that. I like the whole scale situation and just like ripping her heart out like that and to putting on a scale to kind of judge. In the moment the judging is starting to happen, she's like, okay, yeah, I did this, and that, kind of confessing all the stuff she's done. So, and there was also a Jinn. But I think he also, the salesman dude also referred to him as an Ifrit, which is like, just because of like, the Final Fantasy nerd in me is just like, that's what I know Ifrit from. Just like I know, like it wasn't until later on that I found out, like it wasn't until years of Final Fantasy that later on I found out, oh, Shiva's, a religious figure. I don't know if Shiva's a god or not. Obviously in Final Fantasy, Shiva's always depicted as a woman. I don't know if that's actually true in religions. Is it Hinduism that Shiva's from? I don't know. I'm not that familiar. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with like what gods are from what particular religions or mythology. So that whole Jin situation. Only thing I pulled from it is a guy being like, yeah, Jins, we don't actually grant wishes, but then it's like him and the dude have sex. And so there was that moment where it's like they kind of switched to a different plane of existence or something. Was that him passing on the whole being a Jin thing? Because the moment the other dude woke up and like he looks at the wallet and the clothes that were left behind, but it's like, no, that's not what the guy actually looked like. So it's like, so was that the Jin passing itself on to someone else? And he's like, Jins don't grant wishes, and he's wearing the shades and he become, I don't, is that what that's supposed to represent? It seems like those are just kind of like one-offs. I don't know if they're supposed to mean anything, or are they supposed to set the tone of stuff we'll see later on. It's like, oh yeah, we're getting introduced to all these people because we're going to meet them later on. So, I don't know. And obviously Mads went to go get his coin, but sadly when he went to go get his coin, he looked and sees the casket, like the coin burned through the ground and went through the casket, and the casket is empty. And the moment Shadow goes into the room, he sees Laura's there, and it's like, so I was right that the coin was going to do some like zombie bringing her back to life situation, but it's like, how did it work? Because it's not like she actually dug herself out of the ground, because Mads had to dig it up. Like that casket hadn't been opened until, so it's like, did she teleport out? Like, how did that happen? Is she Bat back? Like, is she back without a soul? Is she like a clone, a copy or something like that? I don't know. Literally, that's all I can really say when it comes to this. I don't know, like, what direction everything's taking. Like, what is this plan that Mr. Wednesday has in store? That he's gathering up all these different people for a possible war, including Mads. And, you know, even though Mads doesn't want to be a part of it, but it's the whole situation of like, I guess he's bound to some kind of contract, like Link. I did it again. I was literally about to call him Lincoln. I swear, even when during my notes, if I typed about to type Shadow's name, I'd always type Lincoln, because it messes with me that much. I've never been this messed up on a show before. I don't know why. Because it's been a big gap between American Gods and season 3, which is the last time he's popped up. He popped up on the 100, but I guess, you know, because his name's come up in the 100 too, and it's because I know him so well from that. I guess it messes with me. I don't know. Because it's not like I'm messing up and even accidentally saying the actor's name Ricky. It's like, no, I'm saying like accidentally saying one of his characters from the characters he played on a different show. But nevertheless. Anyway, the point I was making is that maybe he's bound to a contract too. Like, obviously, we know that Mr. Wednesday's kind of tricky and stuff like that. That kind of got brought up in the first episode. So maybe Mads kind of made a deal, thinking his luck will help him through it. But then, like, you know, being who Mr. Wednesday is, he was kind of able to get around it or something. I don't know. I mean, whatever the circumstances may be, we see that Mads is just like F you to everything Mr. Wednesday says. It's like, screw you. Yes, I'll see you in Wisconsin. You SOB. You know, so. And also, like, you know, I kind of skipped over it, but what does it mean now that Laura has returned for Shadow? Like, will that complicate things? Is it a situation that only he can see her? Like, is it something specifically the coin could always do, or is it because Shadow used it that it did that? You know, because like I said, it's a coin that controls luck. So how does luck control whether someone died, like someone coming back to life? I guess like whatever power Shadow is, like maybe he has the power to basically bend reality, which kind of makes sense considering his whole like, you know, stance of like, oh, there's reality and there's fantasy. Maybe that's kind of what his power is, like, you know, and maybe when he threw the coin down, he changed the properties of what the coin can do. Maybe because he was in such pain about Laura and everything. And maybe the coin's magic and it tapped into his powers or something. Because that, once again, it's like I have to bring it up. What is he? Because like I said, it seems like Mr. Wednesday is prepping him for something. Maybe Mr. Wednesday is prepping him to be his replacement in case when it's all said and done. It's like Mr. Wednesday knows the fact is that he will die at the end of all this, but he needs someone to kind of take his place, to kind of keep all the ducks in a row, to make sure everyone, all the gods and stuff, don't just run wild. It's like gotta have someone be the alpha of the pack to kind of keep things in order. Maybe, I don't know. We still didn't even, like I said, even then we don't know what everyone else's ambitions are and what this has to do about the thing that sealed away the bear to speak of. Like, what does that mean going forward? Like, are the others going to try and release this bear? Or, you know, is it something that they're not even worried about? Because the fact of the matter is, this whole thing's supposed to stay sealed up, but it's like, obviously, like, they want to kill Mr. Wednesday, so it's like, but if he dies, this thing gets released. So maybe, like I said, maybe it goes hand in hand. There was a conversation between the youngest of the three sisters and Shadow, where it's like, she's like, yeah, go ahead. You need the moon? Take it. She grabs the moon. It turns into like a Bitcoin and hands it to him. It's like, do not lose it. Do not give it away. She's like, you had the protection of the sun before, so now you have this. Is like, wait, what does that mean? You had a protection of the sun? Is that connected to the whole how the first episode ended with him being hanged, but then all those like faceless dudes getting sliced up, dismembered like that? Like what? Like I keep like it's exciting, but at the same time frustrating not knowing anything. Like I said, I've literally walked into this series knowing nothing. Like I said, some things I walk into it knowing the bare premises of it, but it's like even this, I don't know what the end goal is. Like I said, I'm throwing out these theories and stuff like that. These just conjectures and stuff like that. But it's like there's nothing concrete, you know. Because probably like 90% of everything I've ever said is probably like 100% wrong, but I won't know until we kind of keep going further in. But nevertheless, like I said before, a very good episode. Confusing, but still a very good episode. And I'm definitely very interested to see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.